So now if we want to delete vast CS questions, we'll just click it, then refresh this, and process text remains. So guys, there you go. That's literally how you create a front-end app to let your customers, or even yourself, manage their files for their OpenAI assistant without them needing to go into any backend or just look at things that are a little bit more complicated. Hey guys, my name is Bart, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to get better at coding. So we're going to be building out a simple web app on Replit, which is going to let users add or remove files from their vector store in the Assistants API. So if you watch one of my previous videos where we coded up the Assistants API from scratch, we're using the exact same method. It's just writing the prompt out in plain text, and then we're going to be filling in the gaps. So what we want this to do is function is to be able to add new files or remove files from the vector store. Okay, so firstly, we need to have a vector store. That's what we need. And we're going to be making this on Replit, but it's going to be a HTML page. So it's going to be like, that's the interface between the user and then the backend function. It's the HTML page. So we need a HTML page that has, let's say, 2 buttons. One button to add a file and one button to remove a file. Okay, so for the add button, how does the flow look? Well, first we need to click the button. Then we want to be prompted to add a file. So if we want to add a file to the actual vector store as a user, I need to be prompted to actually upload a file into this web app. To add a file, so I'm going to say upload a file. Then step 3 is going to be to take that file and send to vector store. Okay, so the functionality for removing a file. Okay, so let's just make this a bit clearer. This is the functionality for adding a new file there. This is the functionality for removing a file. And the first step is, well, ideally, I want to see what the file is. I want to be able to choose which file I want to delete. So display all the files. Then 2, choose which file I want to delete. And then 3, delete the file. So we're segmenting these steps out bit by bit because displaying the file is distinct and different from choosing the file, which is distinct and different from deleting the file. So we might want to like click on the file button and then just double confirm like that's the one we want to delete. So we could either do this by presenting all the files and say click the one that you want to delete, or we could click the file first and then click a delete button. I think clicking the file first and then clicking a delete button is a lot safer and more intuitive than just having a list of files and saying delete by clicking immediately, because people make mistakes sometimes. So this is the core functionality, and I'm just going to put end for our sake. So let's say we have a vector store already built out. So I'm just going to go and get this quickly from our dashboard. I'm going to go storage, vector store. I've got one here called testing Bart. So I'm going to say vector store equals this. We're also going to need an API key. So I'm going to go API key, create a new API key, because we're making API calls to basically add and remove files. So we're going to need an API key. Let's just call this Bart API-key. Let's copy that and hit done. And now we have API key as well. Okay, so now we've got pretty much the main things we need in terms of like the vector store ID and then the API key. Now we just need the API calls. So let's go back into API reference and let's scroll down to assistants. So the assistant is the actual thing that's going to be related to this vector store. So let's go to the vector store files section here, and it says create a new vector store file. Okay, so let's go into this functionality. We want to click a button, and then we're prompted to upload a file, and then we want to take that file and send to the vector store. For step 3, let's go to backspace here. For step 3, this is the API call info. Okay, so create a vector store file by attaching a file to the vector store. Okay, so let's click File. What is this? Upload a file. All right, so first it actually seems like we have to upload a file, and then the file that we upload we have to associate to the actual vector store. So I'm just going to copy this curl request. So for the step 3, first we need to, upload a file. I'm going to put this curl information here. I'm going to take this response, and I'm also going to say with sample response. And we do this so that when the AI is creating the code for us, it's going to know exactly what the response object looks like, and it might need to take this, or it might need to take this value from the response object and then use it in our next API call. So we're just giving a sample so it knows how it looks, and it can correctly create the way to capture that response as well, so it can process it. So we've given it the example response. We smelt it again, who cares? Upload a file, and then we have to associate it. So vector store files, create a vector store, and then we have to connect that file to the vector store with ID from the top of this text. Okay, and to do that, we have this curl example. It doesn't really matter if I'm using curl, which is a specific way of like structuring these API calls, or if it had, for example, Node or Python. You could just paste it in and it will know how to convert between languages. But we're going to be writing in JavaScript. So when we're in Replit, I'm actually going to choose a JavaScript, like the backend, which is going to be node.js, and it's going to be writing in JavaScript anyway. It'll know that. So it doesn't matter that we're using curl here. That's totally fine with the sample response, and which is this. Okay. And I'm just going to go to here and say, click a button. Okay, prompt to upload a file. We'll upload the file. And then I want this to be a button called add to vector store. And after it is added, I want a message to say successfully added. So now we're kind of just looking at the user experience, because I'd want some form of feedback to know that things are progressing and things are happening. Okay, so we just figured out how to add a file. Now the functionality to remove a file, display all the files, choose which one, and delete the file. Okay, so we're in the vector store file, list all vector store files. Okay, perfect. So to list the vector store files, let's start writing this out. To list the vector store files, we use this with a sample response of this. And that'll let us actually show all the files. Let's see what we get here. ID, object, vector store ID, file ABC123. Okay, well, I don't think we actually get the file name here. We don't get the file name here. But let's go back to this files. Do we have a files section? Okay, files. Upload a file, list files. What does this have here? File name. Okay. We want the file name actually, because we want to give the user a way to identify what their file is, because, well, if they just see the internal file ID, they're not going to distinguish and say, is this my FAQ, or is this my troubleshooting, or is this whatever it is. So actually, we want the file name here as well. I then want to display the file name in clickable buttons, which is, I think, step 2. From here, choose which file we want to delete. Step 2. To do that, we need to iterate through all files using this API and list file. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here with a sample response response of this. Okay, where our file name, that's what we want. Note, we want the file name. Okay, so I think it'll be able to figure everything else out to delete the file. Actually, no, it won't know how to delete the file. So if we go back to vector store files, let's see delete vector store file. Okay. And to delete the file, delete vector store file, we use this with sample response this. This will remove the file from the vector store, but the file itself will not be deleted. To delete the file, use a delete file endpoint. Okay, so it seems like the vector store is just like not an intermediary, but it doesn't necessarily control the raw original file. It is just associating the file or disassociating the file. In our case of creating a new file, we must have that file in general. So creating it from scratch is needed with the API. But in this case, we could also delete the raw file. But I think that, yeah, okay, well, we'll just delete it. I was going to just say to leave it in case in the backend we want to go through and maybe we don't want to give the user the ability to completely delete the file in case it's an accident. Then they want to come to us and say, hey, can you get this back? So that's completely fine with me. I'm not going to do anything else. That's all I want to do. I'm just going to disassociate it. So one last thing I realized was when we were creating this second part of looking at the files by file name, in the first part, I want to make sure that when we add a file, we actually add the file name as well. So prompted to upload a file, with the response my data. Note, ideally we use the file name of the uploaded file as the file name it is saved as in the vector store. So this should be good enough to get that point across. Okay, so now we've got this function that we want to create. Now I want to go to Replit and let's create a new REPL and let's use node.js. I'm going to say this is the data manager. Let's create REPL. I'll pull this out to make it a little bit easier for us to work with. I want to build a simple web app that has a HTML page that allows me to do the below functionality. Can you make the HTML page and CSS look nice and keep the core JavaScript functionality in a separate JavaScript file? So I'm just prompting it like this because there's a chance that it just makes one long script that holds the HTML and JavaScript in one script. Typically, well, best practice would be to split that up. And then even better practice is to have those individual JavaScript like functions, like one that adds a file, one that removes a file, in totally different pages as well. Which by page I mean just like different files here. That will be the ultimate preference, but for this video we're just going to kind of keep it a little bit rough to get through here, but that will be the step 2 of how I would optimize this script. The instructions are below. Now let's see if we can accept this entire thing, because that was a lot of writing. Okay, so we're off. To create a simple web app for managing files in a vector store, we'll build a HTML page with CSS for styling and separate JavaScript. Whoops. For core functionality, the web app will include buttons to upload and delete files in a vector store. Here's the structure we'll follow. HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Cool. So HTML is like the interaction, like the actual web page. CSS is just making it look good. And JavaScript is completing actions. So first create an index.html file. So let's go index.html. Whatever it says to create, and especially the names, and sometimes it gives you like how the folders should look, make it exactly like that because it'll reference the same name and the same layout in the code that it gives you. So that's just, yeah, keep it the exact same. So we have our HTML page. Let's click insert, and that's going to slot it right into our index.html page. Next, we need styles.css, styles.css. And I don't know how this looks right now, but it doesn't really matter because we're just building the 0 to 1 here. Once we get something going, then we can come back and go 1 to 2 and just like fix up styling, make it look different, upload custom brand colors, whatever else. Then we have script.js. Script.js. Okay. Insert. So now, okay, I'm just going to say, what are my next steps? What do I do now to test this out? Okay, copy all that. Paste in the code. Okay, I thought it would give me some more instructions, but essentially I'm just going to hit run. When I hit run, because this is a brand new app, it should recognize that there's a bunch of stuff that I have to install into this app, and it should install it for me. Or it won't install anything, I'll get some errors. So in this case, nothing really happened, so I'm just going to say I hit run, and nothing happened in the console. Okay, typically opens a web page, web view to display your HTML page, not in the console. Whoa, where are we going? If nothing is happening, let's make sure that setup is correct and manually open and test the web page. So we're just checking our files if everything is there. Okay, do we need some file to serve the web page on? Okay, install dependencies. So now we're kind of getting to the back end of the app, and this is good because this is where I wanted us to get to. Create a package.json, which is what we have here, and it wants us to create it like this. Okay, so description, I'm just going to give it our package.json and say, can you edit this? And it's going to edit it appropriately to whatever we need. Okay, let's backspace, let's insert this. Now it says npm install, and it says for us to change some of the, okay, I'll just do this. I know when I make a public folder, by the way, I know it's going to break the code that I have and I'm going to get an error, but I'm just going to follow this anyway. And then I'm going to tell it, hey, something's broken here, can you fix it? And it will re-give me the code. So I'm going to do the absolute tedious process right now with you, just so you see how this works. So we've made a public file, and we want to put the index.html. We also want to put the styles.css, and also the script.js. So now, in this public file, we've essentially got the functionality, the HTML page, the interaction, where the user interacts with the actual backend of adding and removing files, CSS for styling, and a script, which is like the actual completion of the actions. Okay, so we've organized it like this. We want an index.js file that includes this, and now I'm going to hit run. Okay, so I'm going to go to the shell, which is this. I'm going to paste in this npm install. Okay, let's hit run here and see what happens. So something, okay, perfect. Now this has got our app running. So add file to the vector store. So I'm going to click this and let's find something here. Process text. File successfully added. Okay, so let's just go to our vector store and see if this worked out. So into the dashboard, storage, vector stores, and we have process text, and that's what this was just added. So literally that's as easy as it was. We've just added a file. Okay, so files in vector store. So now I actually want to see what files are available. So I'm going to click list. This says undefined, and that might say undefined. Actually, I don't know why it says undefined. List files, undefined. What does that mean? Okay, no big deal. Well, firstly, part one, from what we've just prompted, super easily worked. And also, I was incorrect before. I thought that we would break this app by putting the public folder. I don't know why it didn't break it. So we'll figure it out in a second, actually. Okay, so I'm going to hit stop for now. And firstly, congratulations, guys. We have the first part of adding a file to the vector store via a front-end web app done. So now the next thing we need to do is just list all the files and then delete them. So that's absolutely fantastic. Just from prompting like this. We just literally prompted it like this, and we didn't have any debugging errors. It just worked immediately. That's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so now I'm just going to go to the AI button here. Awesome. File upload works. But when I choose list files, it just says undefined. Let's see what this comes back with. Okay, what we have here, let's just make this a little bit bigger. It sounds like there might be an issue with how the response data is handled in your script.js when listing files. Let's check to ensure that you're correctly parsing the response from the API and that the data is structured as expected. Investigate the list files button handler. Okay. Script.js. I'm just going to literally import whatever it's given me here because it's updated itself. And maybe here is... Yeah, I'm not too sure. Okay, let's just give it another run. And all we're testing for right now is just to list the file from the vector store. Which is having no response when we click this button. Okay. Click the list files button. Nothing shows up. Can we add some console logs? So now we need a debug, and a console log is going to add it's going to print basically some information to our console here, which is going to let us see at which step or which stage we're failing. And then when we do that, we can isolate, okay, it's this specific section, and then I can return it back to this AI and say this specific section is failing, and then the AI can basically look at the previous step, the next step, and then make its own conclusions and make some updates. So let's just stop this, scroll up a little bit. Here's the updated script.js with logging. So I'm going to delete all this, insert, and okay, cool. So every time you change the code, make sure you rerun. So right now, if I just left this running the whole time and I changed the code, the web app here, it would not reflect the changes. I would have to stop and then restart it. So I'm going to go list files. Okay, clicking does nothing. Clicking the list files button and nothing is happening. No console logs. Okay, so it looks like there may have been an issue with something on the HTML file end. So let's go to the head. So what I think this means is we had something, we didn't associate that script or that specific button click with some action in script.js. That's why we were clicking it, and it was like looking nice to click, but it didn't trigger any function. So now we verify this. I'm just going to repaste it one more time, script.js. So I'm going to backspace everything. Script.js. Okay, let's hit run. List files. Okay, this is, well, it's not working, obviously. So now I'm going to go in and try and find out what's happening myself. So why is this event backspaced? but it's never read. Let's just make sure the first button click works. So let's go to web view. Let's bring this down. Let's go run. Add file. Whoops. Okay, it's going to reset. Add file. It can let me add in file. Okay. Let's just confirm that one more time. So choose something here. Open. File successfully added. Let's refresh this. Refresh this. Let's go again. Okay, so all the files are here and they're added. Let's go list files. Undefined file name. Okay. So now something is working. We have undefined file name. It's just accessing the wrong information. Okay, so, but we're not getting any logs. I don't know why we're not getting any logs. Let's keep going with this anyway. Okay, so now when I click list files, it works, but it shows undefined file names for each file and still console logs. Okay, so let's just look at script.js. Okay, we've got some event listeners, which is just actions of us clicking buttons. Appropriate logs. Stores files. Okay. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit clearer for us, or for me actually. And I think this just gave us. You also script.js with /commentary each section so I can know what is going on. So now we're getting into the heart of debugging, because technically I want the console logs to show so I know what's going on. And I want this commentary to just let me know at a high level what each step is doing, so I can try and isolate things myself. So I do know some JavaScript anyway, but I'm trying to do this as AI as possible. Just to show you my method of how I would do this if I didn't really understand too much of what was going on. So script.js is backspace here. Let's insert this. Yes, for add file, simulate a click in file. Send the file, okay. Let's try it one more time. If it doesn't work, I'm going to go into ChatGPT and just give it a crack there as well. So let's stop this, bring this down, run. List files. Okay, awesome. So we have the file listed, but not the actual file name. So I'm not sure if we made the second API call. But while we're here, I'm just going to, so we've got 4 files here. I'm just going to click this to delete. I'm going to refresh this. So now we have 3 files. Okay, so I'm going to list files again. I'll just refresh this whole thing, so it should just rerun. List files. I'm going to hit this, and we should delete one more here. Okay, awesome. So it's working. Just the only thing is we don't have the additional step that we needed here, which is display the file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this script.js. I'm going to go to ChatGPT and say, I have this script. I can't get it to do one part for me, which I'll put here, and then I'll say, here is the script. Basically paste the script there. And the part that we want done is to list the files and display the names. Okay, so this is exactly what I want it to do, which is this. The issue is that is not returning the file name. It is returning, returning the, and what are we getting from Replit? File-ctu, okay. File-ctu, it's returning the ID, which again is not what we want. The file ID. Can you please edit this and return full? Okay. To properly list the file names from the files in a vector store, you need to make sure that you first get the list of files associated with the vector store and then map those files to file names by querying the endpoint. Okay, so maybe we didn't do that in the script, but now that we have ChatGPT, like an external ChatGPT doing this, yeah, it's just a little bit easier for us to manage. I find that when you're in Replit or any ChatGPT conversation that's getting super long, you can't really go back and try and ask a simple question because it has too much context and it might get it wrong. That's why I like using a fresh ChatGPT sometimes with a very simple question, even though we've got a relatively complex code, so that it can help us out. So let's just let this finish creating the script. I'm going to copy it. And it should have kept everything exactly as we needed it to, but added the extra functionality. So script.js, let's backspace it. Let's stop this, let's rerun it. And now when it's reruns, let's list all files. Perfect. So now we actually have the file names listed. Let's confirm that's what we had here. Vast CS questions and process text. So now if we want to delete vast CS questions, we'll just click it, then refresh this, and process text remains. So guys, there you go. That's literally how you create a front-end app to let your customers, or even yourself, manage their files for their OpenAI assistant without them needing to go into any backend or just look at things that are a little bit more complicated. This is a super simple interface. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, please like, please let me know what you want to see next. And yeah, have a good one. See ya.